everyone, to Doodle-to-Doing. I'm your host, Karen Light, Doodle Empress, aka artist and creative coach at How Doodle, where I help people to awaken and use their creativity towards their goals in life and work through the modality of doodling. On this Doodlecast, I invite thought-provoking guests to chat and doodle with me. I encourage you to grab something to doodle on and doodle with, be as simple or as fancy as you like, and awaken your own inner artist. This creative process can reveal your own insights, ideas, and inspired action. I'm excited to introduce you all to Mike Clouse today. Hello, Mike.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited you're here. So let me say a few words about Mike, everybody. Leveraging explorative questions and holistic learning. You know what? I'm going to go with that. I feel like I'm putting interesting words into your little description here, Mike, but they apply as well. Holistic, as you said, listening, but also there's learning, right? Holistic listening. Mike journeys alongside leaders and entrepreneurs, empowering them in the discovery of the truth that they don't want to see, but is holding them back. I don't have any of those. I don't know what you're talking about. As a
No one does, really. It's just coach talk.
No, we're great. As a leadership and sales coach at 31 Gifts, he discovered his passion for guiding and equipping individuals in gaining the clarity, direction, and framework they desire to live, love, and lead from a secure identity. Today, Mike and I are going to discuss a common challenge in leadership, getting centered on our own identity, worth, and value, rather than unconsciously seeking outer validation. It's a challenge that's so easy to get caught up in, as most of us are leaders because we want to serve and help others. However, funny enough, if we act from the outside in, we often do ourselves and others a disservice. Instead, we must turn that ship around and begin working from the inside out. Yes, so that's what we're here to talk with you about today, Mike, and I'm excited to dive into this.
Likewise, and obviously my pup is as well, as he does.
We can have puppies on this Doodlecast. That's totally fine.
Especially when the Amazon person shows up and delivers. That's who he's protecting me from right now.
Good job, pup. He's leading in his own way, right? All right.
Exactly right.
I'm going to show what we get started with each time is our intentions. Mike, I'm going to ask you you're familiar with this. You've been to my
yes
before. So I'm going to ask you, which one do you think we should focus on today to bring it to the forefront with this topic?
I'll tell you what, the one that really jumped out at me today is forget outcomes.
Forget outcomes. And why does that jump out to you related to this topic?
Because when I think about this topic, a big piece of what causes us to wire from the outside in, as well as kind of keeps us in that space, is because we put so much weight on the outcome, which is, if I can say it this way, as I think out loud, right, is most dangerous when those outcomes are completely outside of our control. But yet we attach so much of our worth, value, and identity to them.
I love that you share that, because I think that's so resonant for many of us. We worry about things that are beyond our control, and then and it's because we're attaching some kind of like our own worth or value on top of that. That hits home. Okay. So let's warm up with that intention a little bit. So this is the time to grab something to doodle on and doodle with as we get started warming up. And I'm going to get you started with a simple little shape. Mike, I would ask you to join me in drawing some loops.
Okay.
So whatever that means to you, draw some loops just slowly around your paper. And after you've drawn some loops, let's see what you got so far.
I like this because I had to stop and think to myself, what do I think a loop is?
Let's see what you think a loop is.
I almost asked you, but then you said whatever that is to you.
Yes, good. So that's the thing that I like to demonstrate right off the bat, is that even a simple thing can mean different things to different people, and all are okay. So nobody's doing anything wrong if they look like Mike's and didn't look like mine, look like mine, they just look like your own. So let's go back to these loops for a little bit now, and you can play with them in any way you want to. So we're warming up again. If you want to bring a different color in on this, if you want to color something in, or if you just want to keep looping, go ahead and let yourself slowly enjoy the looping process, whatever feels fun and interesting to you. And what we're doing right now is practicing that intention that Mike just said, which is we're not worrying about the outcome. This is all just process, finding what feels good to us and following it right now in this moment. We're not worried about how good it is, how bad it is. We're just being curious and following our loop-de-loops. And as you are following your loop-de-loops, we're going to start thinking about our topic a little bit. So, when we are leading things, we can get caught in some loops that are really not helpful. Some thought loops, some patterns of acting, some processes that aren't helpful. And bring to mind just a place where maybe you get caught in a loop a little bit, some kind of cycle that isn't really helping you out much. Maybe it's causing some challenges. Maybe you don't know how to get out of it right now. And as that loop comes up in your mind, I'm going to invite you to take a second from your doodling and just write it somewhere on your paper. And as you write it, right after you're done writing it, what I'm going to invite you to do is put the phrase "forget outcomes" right after it. That already does something for me. I don't know about
Yes, it does. I was about to say the same thing.
That already does a lot for me.
Mhm.
All right, Mike. So let's see what you got going on over there for your warm-up.
Yeah. So I kind of, until you told us to write, what was the loop, right? The thing we kind of came back to, I just added some more doodles, a little coloring in. But what came up for me was kind of just this general thing that loops back for me a lot is this feeling of inadequacy,
Mhm.
right? And right away, as you say, right, forget outcomes. Totally a direct correlation, right? Because the inadequacy comes from having a specific outcome in mind, which that in and of itself isn't bad,
Mhm.
right? But again, it's just realizing forgetting outcomes, not from the standpoint of outcomes not being important. Outcomes are important and they can be important and not define us at the same time, right? Or define
Mhm.
one's adequacy.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, because
so
like what
yeah.
you were saying at the beginning, right? Like you might be showing up in your full
Mhm,
capacity, skills, knowledge, talent, wisdom, all that stuff. And yet outside things could happen that
mhm,
change the outcomes and you have no
mhm,
control over that piece of the pie. And if you're
right.
only basing your adequacy off of that, yeah,
Well
yes,
said. Well
yeah,
said.
yeah. I mean, so what came up for me is this, which is funny. This is probably why I doodle all the time.
Oh, I
Like this
love
idea of
I
needing
love the way your words even loop.
yeah, just the idea though that like things have to be like phrased really well or portrayed super well perfectly before moving forward or getting it out there, sharing it, comes up for me a lot. Like I think that's, I practice what I preach. Like the doodling is about letting go of that stuff. And like I have to continually remind myself to do that. And sometimes I don't. And I find myself stuck in that loop. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, here I am again. Here I am. I'm in that loop. But yeah, writing forget outcomes directly
Right?
correlate there. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's more
Yeah.
about the
So
process of
simple.
like, yeah, just putting it
Yeah.
out there sometimes more than, if it's other people might even know it's not all put together perfectly. It's just we're in our own heads so much we don't even know.
Yes.
So hopefully that even that warm up got you all a little jazzed for our conversation because we are about to dive deeper. And if you get stuck in any point in any of these doodling prompts, feel free just to loop around. That's still going to get your creative juices flowing. It's going to get you in touch with your own ideas, insights, etc. within you. And it's a great way to just enjoy being here, enjoy the process and soaking up the information and the ideas that we're going to be talking about. And yeah, feel free to doodle the whole time we speak. The whole time. I was a teacher for a long time. I always tell my students, you can doodle while I talk. which is really, really learning. Well, I feel like it's growing in popularity, but
I
wasn't.
think so too. I think it is too. I didn't obviously, right? And growing up, I'm kind of jumping in here, but growing up, doodling in elementary, in high school, didn't dare do it,
Mm,
right? Didn't dare do it because it gave the impression, at least, that you weren't listening. It wasn't until college, right, when there wasn't somebody that could see you. Rooms were a little bigger, and I started doodling and drawing pictures as I was listening to the lecture. I actually remembered more of what I heard, of what I was listening to. More
yeah,
of it stuck.
it's scientifically
So,
proven.
right?
Scientifically proven to help you retain information. Yeah, it's a big topic, and I could talk about it for a long time. So let's just put it to use here with our
Okay.
first question that will be followed by a doodle prompt. So let's dive into this topic a little bit deeper, Mike. I know that you are a leadership and an executive coach, and I'm curious to know what you often see in your clients that lets you know that they've been wiring from the outside in versus what we're talking about here, which is wiring from the inside out. What lets you know that they're kind of going about this thing in reverse order?
Yeah, great question. And I'm going to preface this with, I don't support and guide and coach people through this because I'm perfect and I've got it all figured out, right? I'm on the same journey and I don't want to go alone. So hopefully I'm enough, maybe 2 minutes ahead of who I'm supporting so that I can help guide through, because what I see in them is the same thing I see in myself. When I realize that I'm wired, or allowing, at least in that moment, the wiring to be outside in. So it usually cues in terms of emotions, right? That those emotions can be irritability, they can be overwhelm, they can be anger, it can be any kind of emotion that kind of takes us out of the present and into kind of this ruminating, or into our heads just a little bit too much. Can notice it in language. It can notice it when there's language that, again, is very outcome focused, and for lack of a better word, fear or insecurity focused, and more of the reserved and what could happen rather
Mm.
than what's possible kind of language.
So the
Even
what ifs
physical
and the
cues.
negative.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What was that?
Yeah, like the what ifs and the negative connotation, not
Right.
in the positive,
Right.
opportunistic.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, not all that's bad, because it's good to think and be prepared. And it's when we get stuck there, when we don't let that grow into also the what's possible, and move into the other side. And I think the last piece then is, it can even be physical cues. A lot of times, as I hear these things or see these things in the conversations, a great question to ask them is, where do you feel this? When these moments happen, where do you feel this in your body? Because there can be some real, faster heart rate, cold palms, sweaty palms, things like that. The more we can be aware of moments where it's happening, it sets us up to then start breaking that cycle. If we can be aware of what's happening and when it's happening, we can start breaking that cycle.
I love that, because what you just did is you gave people a number of ways that they can be cued in to
Mhm.
it's happening for them. And we all might cue into different things easier. So some people
Yeah.
notice what's going on in their body before they understand their feelings or their thoughts. Some people might see their thought first and then, oh yeah, this is happening in my body at the same time. And all of that is just really useful information to have. Like a lot of times our emotions are given this negative light in the workplace, but if you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you're feeling a lot of frustration or irritability, that could be a light bulb moment for you of like,
Yeah,
something's
for
off.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way you just said that, right? As a light bulb. Um, Often it doesn't feel like a light bulb moment, right? It doesn't feel fun. And at the same time, if we can reframe these kind of things to see them as a potential gift,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean we have to like it, right? But if we can see them as a potential gift, when we start recognizing these cues, um, we can turn kind of those stumbling block moments into stepping stones, because we can recognize, hey, this is a moment where I'm most likely I'm wired from the outside in, right? I'm putting my worth, my value, my too much of who I am on the outcome, on something external that I don't even have control over.
Yeah. And when people do that, when they are wiring from the outside in, what do you also notice, not just what the clients are saying or feeling or thinking, but like what do you notice is happening around them because of that? What's the impact of that in
Oh,
place?
yeah. So, and oftentimes what the impact is, right, is when we're thinking and feeling that way, um, first thing we want to do is alleviate the pain and get out of the discomfort. And if we do that too quickly without realizing what's there, why it's there, we run the risk of trying to force. This is going to sound real coachy, right? But I'm a coach, so
You're a coach. Let it
we're
go.
more likely to force a reality
Mm,
rather than work and cooperate with the one that's unfolding, right? So a quick example, in the coaching work I've done over the years, I remember very vividly the first time I stepped out of one-on-one coaching into group coaching. Talk about all the cues, emotional, physical, right? I'm in my mind, I'm thinking about all the things that could go wrong because I want to do well. I realized my sense of worth, value, adequacy, ability as a coach, I was staking solely on the outcome. And that outcome was as simple as people walking away from that time with me in a group coaching session thinking, he's awesome. He did a great job, right? I like him,
mm-hmm.
right? So my mind's caught up in those kind of things. And so the danger, coming back to your question, the danger, if we don't recognize moments like that, is to step into that space. And now we made it all about us rather than making it about the clients that came to that session to learn and grow. I'm so focused on trying to force a reality that they like me and I do a good job
Mm-hmm.
that I'm less likely to do a good job
Mm-hmm.
because I'm focused on me and not on them and their needs.
And that's huge because I mean, most of this is going on unconsciously, right? Like we're not
Mhm.
like setting out to make it all about us. And
Right.
and then I think also the reaction from the people who show up is also unconscious, but
Mhm.
you can sense when somebody isn't really there with you, when somebody isn't
Mhm.
really listening to you, when
Mhm.
there isn't really space for your ideas or input,
Yeah.
because whoever is there has this very narrow agenda, and you're either
Mhm.
on it or off it, you know?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
the implications of that are huge.
they are. They are, right? It's like, everything from the size 10 reaction to a size 1 problem.
Mm,
Right? So a little thing happens and we explode because we're already so heightened
yeah.
from what if to which then can undermine anything we do after that point, right?
Mhm.
If we kind of set the tone with that. Um, as well as to your point, to listen. We're not as good at listening if we're too preoccupied in our head, and we might miss some of the simplest but yet most profound truth or observation that individual needed us to hear so we could simply reflect it back to them, be the mirror.
Mhm.
Um, and which really helps when you can help people see they already know, they
Yeah,
just haven't connected,
yeah.
right? You're not just supporting them in the moment, you're helping them develop a framework for leaning into these moments in the future, even when their
Mhm.
coach isn't there, right? So
Yeah.
the challenge is missing out on those opportunities
And
again.
isn't that what we want more of?
Yeah.
I know for me, the number one complaint I hear about people is about their jobs is managing people. Like they're not
Yeah.
motivated, they're not really pulling their weight, or, like they're not really doing
Hmm.
what I want them to do kind of
Hmm.
scenario. And isn't what we ultimately want is them just to lean in to the job
Yeah,
more. And
exactly.
this helps maybe hopefully give some people some ahas around what might be happening within you that could influence that. Maybe it's influencing the way you don't want to right now, but then that means you have the power to influence towards what you are wanting, which is
Yeah.
mhm.
Again, so well said, Karen. And you make me think of going back to your original question, right? What challenges does this cause? Whether you're a leader, whether you're a teacher in a classroom, whether, whatever, um, this can lead to. So again, if we're too focused on the outcome and forcing something, we're less likely as a leader, we're less likely to delegate, not just tasks, but delegate authority, which is not only important for setting boundaries for us so we can get our stuff done, but we're also developing our people. When we're able to delegate tasks and authority, when we're able to spend time focused on them, knowing that, yeah, we want this outcome. And it's also very important that these individuals are a part of it and learn it and grow with it. Um, we're less likely to let them make the mistakes they need to make to grow. Right.
Yeah, and
So,
those are
so
two, you just touched on two, what Daniel Pink says are the three
yes.
intrinsic motivators, two of them, right? Autonomy,
Mhm.
Mastery, like you're growing and learning, and
Mhm.
you have some control over your sphere of responsibilities to make them happen in
Mhm.
a way that feels good to you or that works for you.
Yeah.
And that intrinsic motivation is what, if you don't know what that is, it's just the motivation that comes from within. Like you are pulling on somebody's natural um wanting to be a part of something versus like dangling a carrot in front of them and saying, if you do this, you get this. It's more
Mhm.
like, no, I want to be here. And that changes
Yeah.
everything when people are in it in that way. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So this rewiring process, this is what we're
Mhm.
going to dive into with you because I want all of you to be able to experience a bit of rewiring for yourself as Mike talks through the steps.
Okay.
So, Mike, start us off. What is
Yep.
step one in this rewiring process?
Step one relates directly to your very first question, right? How can you tell? How can you tell when wiring is more outside in than inside out? And it's about being aware, right? If you want to just remember one word, remember aware. Be aware of moments, and if we can put it even more simply to make it easy to understand, be aware of moments where you find yourself proving or hiding.
Hmm.
Um, and just be so proving, right, is powering up. It's that size 10 reaction to a size 1 issue or problem or challenge. Hiding, as you would imagine, is um kind of withdrawing. It's kind of pulling into yourself, which hoping to avoid, right? It's more about an avoidance. It's
Mm-hmm.
not to say that anytime you remain quiet, you're hiding, or anytime you stand strong, you're proving. It comes down to motive. Am
Yeah.
I doing it because I'm fearful or insecure about an outcome? So I'm hoping to force
Mm-hmm.
something, either
One
by
of my
avoiding it.
cues,
Yeah,
one
go
of my
ahead,
cues
please.
for proving
Yeah.
is exhaustion.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
so tired right now. What's going on? Oh, my, because that again, it's that motivation behind the thing. It's not the thing I'm doing in and of
Hmm.
itself. That's when it's really a cue for me. When I enjoy the thing that I'm doing, but I feel exhausted, it's like, what happened? It's not just because I was up here talking, it's because I was trying in my mental gymnastics to prove to everybody in the room that I knew what I was talking about, or
Yes.
I had this thing down and you can ask me anything and I'll be fine, and that's,
Yes.
we can't prove that like that. No, stop, be a human, like,
Yeah.
you know, you
So
don't know what you don't know. And when I start doing
yeah.
those, I'm like, oh, okay. Then you feel the relaxation. And it's like, oh, okay. That's the opposite of proving to me, is feeling a little relaxed in that moment.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect example of what being aware looks like, Karen, in that moment. It's getting to know what proving and or hiding look like for you. Neither is better than the other. They're flip sides of the same coin. Proving and hiding are part of those all those cues we talked about before, right? Language, thoughts, physical, right? It's all that stuff. It's what does proving and hiding look and feel like for you? And if you were watching yourself in one of these moments, what would you see? Right. So get to know what proving and hiding looks and feels. What's going through? What you got?
I just had a little aha moment back to my warm
Yes.
up. I think my hiding moment is when I'm making everything too perfect to show it.
Mm.
That's when I'm
Yes.
hiding, right? Like I'm hiding behind, no, it's not good enough yet. No, it's not good enough yet. So I can't put it out. I can't put it out. I can't put it out. And that's
Yeah.
hiding. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not necessarily you're doing nothing, but you're not like taking the next, I'm not taking the next
So
step
well
in
said.
how it shows up for me.
So well
Okay.
said.
So everybody, I just identified for you what some of my big cues are. But let's doodle for a minute. What cues show up for you? What cue? You can just pick one to work with for now because we're just going to do a minute doodle. But what shows you that you're either proving or hiding? Is it something that you're doing, something you're not doing? Is it a feeling that you're having? Is there a part in your body? Remember, all of these things can cue us into that. So I'm going to put 1 minute up and just doodle about that. What comes up for you when you're proving or hiding? a doodle that's capturing your cue, hopefully, that you should put up somewhere. Put it on your phone as a screensaver, maybe even like hang it around your laptop wherever you work, because now, awareness is such a big thing, right? Like nothing happens until you're first aware of it. And like we were talking about, these patterns are not conscious. They're not you're not setting out to prove, you're not
Mm-mm.
setting out to hide. There's a million reasons why we act the way we act, and it happens. So
Yeah, and it's been developed, right? We've developed and we've gotten to this space since the day we were born till now, right? So
yeah.
it's not like even as we learn this today, it's not like it changes overnight, right?
Mm,
It's this
yeah.
progression and this awareness and then the intention.
So
Um,
what came up for you, Mike? You
so
want to
for
share?
me, for me, so there's, I guess that's me and the flames on top. A lot of times when it's proving for me, when I get in the proving space, it's anger.
Mm,
I feel it whether it shows or not. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I'm sure I think it doesn't and it does, right? But there's anger. And then I didn't know quite how to draw it, but this is an anvil, right?
yeah,
If
I
you
knew
remember all
it
those
looks
wild,
just like
okay,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the Roadrunner.
So
Uh-huh.
yeah, so the weight, right? And probably as I drew this, right, because it's the first thing that came to mind, another way that it looks like for me, and it's a picture I want to figure out how to draw. I've said these words before. It feels like I'm wearing a lead overcoat, right?
Mm,
So it's just like this weight
like
that
an
I feel like
armor.
I'm wearing around. Yeah, that
Yeah.
just is heavy.
You might enjoy it. There's a very short little book. It's called The Knight in Rusty Armor.
Oh,
It's like a
very
short
good.
myth. Short myth.
I'm writing that down so I
You
don't
might
forget it.
enjoy. I forget the name of the author, but you'll find it. It's some psychologist or somebody who wrote it. Um,
Wrote it
yeah,
down.
and I think that's so interesting too, looking at your doodle with the anvil. It's totally encompassed within your body. So it's not
Mhm.
even something that you're necessarily showing, or other people might not even know this is going on within you. Um, and suddenly
That's what
it's heavy.
That's well said. That's
Mhm,
well said. Those closest to me, right? So
mhm,
so my wife Kara, she
mhm.
knows, right? But others, she can sense it with her spidey senses. Uh, but most others don't when it's that heavy, when it's the weight. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So I doodled my exhaustion one, but then it was my just flopping
Oh
over a
wow.
desk.
Yeah.
But then I'm seeing
Yeah.
how it creates sort of the vicious cycle
Mhm.
of like, okay, back to the drawing boards, all these things, gotta do, but it doesn't go anywhere this way. It just feeds back to this.
Goes back to that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I think that's probably true for most of us. Our proving and our hiding are probably two ends of the same stick. And
It really is, and it's such a beautiful depiction of the cycle, right? Again, what we're talking about is a cycle we get into. It is very subconscious, like you said, and to have not only to be aware of it, but to have a picture like that of what your cycle can look like. Such a powerful piece of the awareness
mhm.
that's necessary to break that cycle.
Yes. And like you said, it's not going to break overnight. So that's another reason why I think having these
Mhm.
visual cues, putting them up around,
Yeah.
can help you to be more aware and even start over time seeing what even triggers it so that
Hmm.
you can even start getting in front of it a little bit, right? Like I know
Hmm.
that this sort of thing will trigger my proving or hiding. What can I do now so I don't go into that mode? Yeah,
Hmm.
visual cues. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Step
Fantastic.
two. Tell us about step
Yes.
two.
Step two then is the after we become aware. This is kind of the counterintuitive piece is we want to lean into that moment, right? So kind of like what we talked about before, you recognize you recognize the cue, you're proving or hiding. It's leaning in and asking yourself the questions about that. Why do I feel this way? What triggered this? Right? What can I remember, glean, observe, identify as a trigger in this moment? And why does it matter so much to me?
Mm,
What does this mean? What am I afraid it says about me? It makes me feel what other people might think. Why am I feeling this way? And um, it's important when we ask these questions to do our best to reframe our mindset around them. We're not asking them to beat ourselves up because these are very natural things we're talking about. We're talking about this because we're human and humans battle with this. right? So it's how do we asking these questions so we can learn and gain clarity so that we can grow and move forward from it,
Mhm,
right? So again, there's some of those questions, and not that these are the only ones, right? But some good ones to start with. What triggered this?
mhm.
Why does this matter so much to me? Why do I believe I'm feeling this way? What am I afraid this says about me? What am I concerned others might think? So
Right.
starting to peel back some of those layers that to bring clarity out of the emotion and the cues associated with proving and hiding.
And I like your reminder that this is just a human process.
It's a human process.
Curiosity, some levity
Yeah.
in the process is really helpful. So we're gonna doodle to keep the levity up in this process. I actually got these questions that I'm gonna put in front of you all because you're gonna pick one in just a second. And I also want to let you know that I'm gonna put them in the show notes. So when you watch this, you can refer to them that way too if it's helpful. Because I think these are great. That's one of the things I think a lot of us want to be curious, but sometimes curiosity is also a muscle that hasn't been used in a while if we're stuck in some of these patterns. So I love that you provide questions to get us started. And
Mhm.
they look like questions you could use your whole life long and continue learning with if you needed to. All right, so I'm going to share the screen with these questions. Here's these lean in questions for you all. We're going to take a minute to doodle. I want you just to pick one question that is calling to you at the moment and do a doodle of what it comes up when you think about that thing that you did in the warm up, right? Mine being like making it all perfect, Mike's being about inadequacy. I want you to lean in with one of these questions and doodle what comes up for you as you start thinking about that challenge in terms of that question. All right, so what came up for you, Mike? Do you want to share?
Yeah. So for me, what immediately came to mind as soon as you asked the question was the measuring stick, right? I don't, it's kind of small on my screen, but it's that
Yeah,
measuring
no, it's
stick
great.
of here's what it takes to hit that awesome, right? Which, inadequacy is what I kind of fear, but yet when I'm really honest with myself, I don't want to just be adequate, right? My
Mm,
desire is to be awesome, and
mhm,
that's up here. And so, the question for me was, what am I afraid this says about me?
mm,
And that's that I don't measure up.
mm. Yeah, oh, such a good doodle. So resonant. Absolutely. I think it hits me too. Like we all that's the thing about all of these. I think when we really hit it, the root is same in all of us, right? Like it
Hmm.
might show up in this way for you because you're doing these things with these people, but
Hmm.
the root of it is just like, oh, me too.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right. And I want to come back to that after you share your doodle. I don't want to share it
Okay.
now because I don't want to sidetrack us, but remind me, there's something about that resonance across the board
Okay.
after you share your doodle. Okay.
All right. So mine two things came up. So the question that jumped out to me was, why does this matter so much to me?
Mm.
And
Oh, wow.
and I think this is why it gets confusing because I think it's mixed up, right? Like there's
Hmm.
really good motivations and really passionate whys. And like my heart is in it and I feel something and I want to give it and I want to do it and I want to be it. And it can feel heavy, like I might fail at this. And so I gotta, make it perfect to give myself the best shot that I possibly can have because it's a big thing that I want to do. And so therefore, that part feels heavy. And so it
Hmm.
gets all sometimes convoluted. Um, and that makes it
Sure
confusing.
does.
Mm-hmm.
Sure does. Sorry, I got excited there. Did I cut you off?
No, go.
Yeah, it sure does, right? Because there's so much in that wanting to be awesome. There's so much positive,
Mhm.
right? Because in that anybody that's involved with something like this, personal development, recognize we want to be awesome. We want to do well because we want to have impact,
Yeah.
right? So it is so easy to conflate
Mhm.
the outcome with
Mhm.
our identity and worth and value, right? To have that passion to know there's good there and um, to let it become that weight,
Yes.
right? That now it all depends on me.
Well, I even just noticed
Forgetting.
while you're talking about it and listening to myself talk about it, the one thing I
Mhm.
said about this part over here is I want to be that, right? Like just be.
Yes.
And over here, it became about the outcome, like what I want
Oh,
is so
so
big.
good.
And I'm not just being it. I'm too worried about what's coming down the line versus like what's right here. How can I just be that as I am right now?
You're
Yeah.
right. Such a wonderful illustration as an illustrator, right? Such a wonderful illustration of why it's important to talk about this
Mhm.
and to express it and to get it out of our heads, right? For me as a coach, I'm typically in the verbal, let's talk about it.
Mhm.
Such power here, Karen, in this process you're taking me through right now of the doodling, because it's the visual representation of that conflation, right?
Mhm.
It's the visual representation of, like you said, as you say it out loud now,
Mhm.
as you say it out loud, as you write it out loud,
Right.
this connection and this next level awareness you have, and not just the awareness, but you're getting some of the why. You're
Mhm.
starting to piece and parse out some as you lean in what's going on in that moment in the mindset.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I'll just quickly say about doodling is we get caught in our thoughts a lot. So when we insert an image, it puts new thoughts in our head. And then that's
Hmm.
why some of those moments that happen, like as they're happening for the both of us as we're doing it, right? Because yes, I've thought about my big why 5,000 times. I've helped clients their big whys 5,000 times.
Yeah.
Why is this important? Why is this important? But there's more that I'm uncovering just because I'm doodling about it now today where I'm at,
Mhm.
what's happening, this conversation. So there's
Yeah,
more to kind of uncover. We're fascinating. We have a lot going on inside of us.
we do. We do, right? And the thing I wanted to say about the resonance across the
Oh,
board,
good. I was
right?
about
Like
to bring it up.
measuring
Yeah.
up, yeah, is honestly, and it's oversimplification, but it's not. If we were to boil what we're talking down into two things, as humans, we're constantly trying to answer the question, am I doing a good job and do you like me?
Mm,
Which
mhm,
are measure up kind of questions.
mhm,
um, right? And we're doing it kind of subconsciously, very easily in many aspects and in many situations. And it doesn't necessarily mean we're doing it all. There may be part aspects of our life where we're more secure and we do it less,
mm.
right? But am I doing a good job and do you like me?
Yeah. And that really just shows again, like the complexity because part of those questions come up because we want to connect, right? Like we
Hmm.
want to connect with people. We want relationship. And we want to feel love and support. We want to give love and be
Hmm.
supportive. So it's beautiful and its underlying thing. If we can untangle it and have, like
Yeah,
you said, like the right motivations behind it, it could be really
yeah,
awesome or it could be really detrimental. Okay, step
yeah.
three.
Step three. Step three is the flip, right? So we become aware. We've leaned in and we've gleaned some clarity and some understanding around why we've connected so much, or why this is such a heavy moment, or we're proving or hiding because we've connected so much of our identity, our worth, and our value to an outcome that we ultimately don't have control over. So the next piece is flipping that lie. There's a lie at the heart of that we're
Mm,
believing. So our beliefs, right? Our actions are a result of our beliefs and our thoughts. So if we want to really change those actions, break the cycle, we've got to continue to parse out to get the clarity and discover what's the lie and flip that lie, not to hype, but to truth,
mm,
right? Um, in my notes here, I have insecurity is grounded in a lie we believe, um, or we're tempted to believe about our worth, value, or identity. So leaning in helps us identify the lie, and flipping the lie um, can again, this is kind of tricky because it's not about just positive mindset or positive talk, right? Yes, it's positive, and it's what is a truth, a better truth to
mm,
replace this, right?
mm.
So
So I
maybe
just have to
go
pause you
ahead.
there. I just think that's beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you for framing it that way. I tend to be a positive person, but even I get exhausted by
Yeah.
by the
Right.
positive speak, and truth is just so much deeper and more sacred and hopeful, I think. What's the deeper truth? I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the deeper truth? Thank you for saying that because that helps me kind of put my thoughts together around this
Hmm.
a little bit more. So there's more questions we can ask ourselves to kind of help get to what's the lie and then what's the truth? What's the truth we need to flip it to, right? So questions like, what is or are the beliefs that foster this fear, this insecurity, that I'm feeling, right? And within that fear, what's the lie I'm believing about myself?
Hmm.
Right. So, an example of that could be um, going back to my coaching, my group coaching experience that I shared about. The lie that I was believing there is that their experience and their growth was solely my responsibility, that I had to be able to nail it and fix it for them.
Hmm.
When the truth is, I'm a good coach who's constantly trying and learning and growing to get better so that I can support people, right? So I can go in and do everything perfectly and they still may not get out of it what they want of it if they're not fully participating.
Right.
Right. So the truth is I'm going in with a heart to serve and skills, talents, and abilities to do so. I can't make the experience for them.
Yes. Right.
That's the truth I had to ground myself in over and still do over and over and over again when I step into my coaching opportunities with those I serve.
Mhm.
Right.
I
So,
over and over again, I have to remember that for myself.
yeah.
I'm like, I am
Right.
45 minutes of somebody's week. I am
Yeah.
45 minutes
Right.
of
Right.
maybe somebody's month. Like, it depends
Right.
on how often they coach, right? Like, or
Right.
I am like 1 2-hour workshop in this person's life, like
Yeah.
I can't, sometimes that rationality kind of steps in and balances out my emotions. Um,
Yep.
to put it back where it should be. Yeah. To bring
Well
me back to
said.
the truth of it. Yeah.
Well said.
Hmm.
And then continue on with those questions, right? What is are the beliefs that foster this fear, this insecurity, this lie,
Hmm.
right? The next can be what is a healthier, a better, healthier, more true belief that's necessary to replace this lie,
Mm.
right? We could talk about things to do, but if we just talk about things to do differently, then it's just behavior modification. And it only lasts as long as the next time we get flipped on our head. But if we get to the heart of it and think about what is the better, healthier, more true belief necessary to replace the lie, now we're talking about changing mindset. So when this happens again, we're more likely to continue this progress we're making towards wiring from the inside out,
Mhm.
which that wiring from the inside out, right? The next kind of question pertains to that is if I knew, if I right now in this moment believed, so here's a belief that all of us can use to help replace the lies is if I truly believed, even though I may not be there yet, right? If I truly believe that my worth, my value, and my identity are never really in jeopardy,
Mm.
what does this situation, this moment need that I can
Mm.
give it?
Mhm.
Right. So instead of, so the first is that belief of my worth, my value, my identity, they're never really in jeopardy. The only thing that changes is how maybe I think about myself or maybe how someone else thinks of me.
Mhm.
That doesn't define me as much as it can hurt. Right.
Right.
And then it's that next step of, and this gets into the next number four, but what can I give this situation? What does it need and what can I give it if I know my worth, value, and identity isn't in jeopardy?
Mm. Mhm.
And then the last question is if I know I have nothing to prove and no reason to hide, who do I want to be and how do I want to show up in this moment?
Yes.
That can lead us to more of that truth.
Oh, okay. I love this. And I think, we're presenting it here as like, 4 steps. And you just
Right.
but like we just want you to have the steps, and we're Mike and I are both coaches, so this is a sometimes just getting the awareness could be
Yeah.
while. Sometimes, leaning in could take a long time to really uncover what's going on
Hmm.
there. And then to flip it is not that easy all the time. It can take some time to really
Yep.
flip it in a way that you can feel grounded in, that you're not
Hmm.
just giving lip service to, but that feel really grounded in
Hmm.
it. But we're going to practice. We're just going to practice flipping. So I'm going to give you a minute to doodle. I really want you to think about this lie that might be at the heart. of your proving or your hiding behaviors, and what might be a deeper truth there? Like what might actually be really going on that's true, that can help you to reframe and flip those behaviors. Okay, just for a minute, as much as you can, a minute to get to a deeper truth. We're going to doodle. Something interesting is happening over here, Mike.
Like me too.
This is not what I expected.
Me either.
Okay, so I have to tell you how this process unfolded, because I think that sometimes the way our doodles happen can also be very revealing. So when I was thinking about getting to a deeper truth, I had no idea like up front what I was going to get to at all. And so I just decided to do this doodle of like going deeper. So I was like just following this line down to see what would start happening. And I thought at the bottom I'd draw something that like was the deeper truth in like this very representational way. But instead I wanted to go back out again. And then I wanted to go back out again. And then the thing that was coming up for me when I thought about it is like going back to my original thing of wanting to make everything perfect, right? Instead of putting it out there. No matter which way I put it out, I'm going to have a winding road. I can shed my, spread my light in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be this one way figured out perfectly. And it's always going to be windy. So even if I think I have it perfect, it's going to be windy. I know that. I think I have things perfect. And then I go over here and over here. So, and I love this idea. What came up for me was this concept around like, you can never really get it wrong. Like everything is, when you're looking at it the way we're talking about it, which is something is a learning experience and places to be curious. And then it's always a learning road. And it's who you're going to meet is who you're going to meet. When you're going to meet them is when you're going to meet them. And it's, you can't really put it out there wrong. You just put it out there and go to the next step and see where that takes you.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Because what we're talking about, how quick we are to put the label right or wrong on things that they're right or wrong isn't even possible.
It's so weird. Yeah. So
There's only the next iteration.
Get down there.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. For me, it was this realization that the very thing I was doing, right, the measuring stick that I had for myself is actually the measuring stick I'm trying to break, not only for myself, but for other people, right? So part of it is helping us recognize that we're constantly putting these measures up against ourselves and for other people, that again, that are outside in. They're not inside out. So holding on to, clinging to a belief myself too many times, that's one that I'm actually working daily to help other people break.
I love it too, because if I look at those side by side, it also looks like the measuring stick is like a wall. And like when you break the measuring stick, you can get to this other side. Like you can see over it now. Like once it's falling, you'll be able to see over it and see what's over there. And what's awaiting you.
Thank you for that. I really like that.
And he's happy about it. He's like, yeah.
He's happy about it.
It feels so good to take this action. Right. I like this action.
That's right. That's right. And again, the truth being in, I know how I want to show up.
Yeah.
I know how I want to show up to serve others in the work that I get to do every day.
Yeah.
How can I continue to show up that way for myself as well?
Mm.
right? And so that I continue to learn and grow in my ability to do that for others.
Yes. Yes. Talk about from the inside out, showing
Yeah.
ourselves in that way too.
And
Mhm.
I and maybe I'm, with your doodle too, right? You're coming in, but then you're going to back out. It's the coming in so that, right? It's like a mentor of mine a long time ago asked me that this amazing question when I shared something with him. He said, "So that," and then he just
Mm.
looked at me,
Mm. Yes.
right? So then it's
Doing that
to
so
your
that.
yeah, your
Uh-huh.
to your point, right? No matter which way I go, it's always going to be a winding road, and there's even a so that to that, right? Because there's learning and growth that we go through that then we can
Mm.
leverage and use in our support of others.
Yes. Okay, I'm feeling uplifted over here. Hope you
Okay.
all are getting there too. We're gonna do this last step, and then we're gonna use that step to go into a little bit longer of a doodle. So Mike,
Yes.
I know you started alluding to it already, but
Yes.
give us the full last step
Yes. The
process.
full last step. So we've got aware, lean in, flip, and then as we get into this space of clarity, this new belief, the last step is flow.
Mm.
And flow is about actually taking the step, right? We've got this. Now what do we want to do? Now to what do we want to do? That's much more of a result of who we want to be and not just an action, right? So taking the next step, one step at a time, living and leading from this new belief, not expecting ourselves. The last thing we want to do is expect ourselves. We've got this new belief, right, that we may not have contemplated before. We got to give ourselves grace to not all of a sudden expect us to believe it.
Yeah.
Even that new belief is a progression,
Mhm.
right? So asking ourselves, if I was a person who believed this, what would that look like?
Oh, I
What
like
would
that.
my next step? What could my next step be?
Hmm.
Right? What could that look like as someone who believes X, this new healthier belief? What does it feel like to lead my team through Y, to teach my students with the mindset of Y, to go about my day taking care of the household to
Hmm.
believe Y, right? So flow is about taking what we've learned and simply taking steps with it, not for perfection, but for progress.
Hmm.
And coming back to what you shared earlier, Karen, right? We call it steps. Maybe a way we like. So the framework I'm sharing with you is from the coaching framework I use. It's SightShift, um, and we like to call it a framework because it's not this lockstep linear thing. It's a constant progression. It's tools, it's awareness, it's a framework for lifelong learning and growth, right? We're giving you steps and questions that then you continue to apply and build on yourself.
Yeah, I think that's important because you might be in a spot where you're like, oh, I'm doing this thing again. And you could flip it because you've been practicing that one. But other
Hmm.
ones, you're like, oh, I got to go through, I got to lean in, I got to figure out what's going on here before I
Hmm.
can flip this thing and take a
Hmm.
next step. So you can be in different spots, or you could take a step and be like, oh, I just did something different. What was that? And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
like looking back, oh, I thought differently. That's cool.
Yeah. And the
Hmm.
way you just said it, the language you used and the energy with which you just said it, learning to leaning more into that, the way you just said it was an excitement,
Hmm.
right? Even if it's not the most exciting time, there was an excitement about the way you just said it because there's learning and growth.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
may have just messed up, right? Which that's not fun, yet that mess up is a learning opportunity.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
I
stop
think.
before I get on too much of a sidetrack.
And I want to just pick up on another thing you were mentioning, which is like, when we flip the thing, it's not necessarily something um, that we really believe. It's not an integrated belief yet, right? It's just like
Mm-hmm.
it's like a new thought that we want to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And the ways in which we start to believe things is when we take action on it and see evidence that it's a good belief, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
we see evidence. That's how we believe things. And then it starts reinforcing itself. So, what we're going to do in this longer thing is start to just take the thought that came up and um, think about an action that we can start taking to reinforce it, to make it something that becomes more integrated within us. Your eyes and do a little imagination meditation with it first, because I really want you to get into this space. And just start by reconnecting with that breath. Feel yourself going totally within, which is where we want to start this process, within you. I always find it helpful to put a hand somewhere in my solar plexus. It feels like a nice centering place for me. You could rest your hands open if you want to be open to new things. Just simply balanced somewhere comfortably, taking in some nice deep breaths. Feeling yourself just get grounded. Maybe you want to put your feet on the ground. Maybe you really want to feel your sits bones in your chair. Feeling your sturdiness, your firmness, your foundation. Rooting yourself within you. Feeling, drawing your energy back in, drawing your thoughts back in. Taking some deep breaths as they gather. And imagine that you're no longer in that loop that you were doodling about way at the beginning of this Doodlecast. You're no longer stuck in that loop, because you have got a new thought, a new curiosity, a new idea of how you might want to move with that challenge, to break that loop. How you might want to move with that deeper truth that came up. And I'm not talking about moving mountains here. I'm just talking about a next little step. One little thing that you can do to start integrating that, to start building that new truth as a belief that you carry with you and start acting from. And see yourself taking a step in a direction with this that feels like, oh, that's a little different and exciting and rooted in something I want to be rooted in. What's happening around you as you take that step? If this step involves other people, how are you impacting them? And as you start to see things, I want you to slowly blink your eyes open and start capturing some of these things on paper. Just following it for the next 3 minutes to see wherever it wants to go. Not worrying about capturing anything directly, just be inspired by what you saw there. And forget the outcome, let it evolve as it wants to evolve. so. You've been in my doodle shops enough. We're going to do this the fun way,
Okay.
which is we're going to hold them up for each other and say what we see in them.
Okay.
And this is a fun thing that anybody watching can do with anybody in your life. Don't tell them anything about it. Just invite them to say things about it, but give them the guideline that it's not about, there's no judgment. So it's not about how good or bad it is. In fact, tell them they can't say anything about the skill involved and only about like the meaning or what it reminds them of or what it makes them feel. So that's what we're going to do. Would you like to go first or do you want me to go first?
I can go first.
All right.
I thought that 3 minutes went really fast. I
It
thought I
did
had
go
more
fast.
time.
I know. I know.
So here is mine.
I love it because I feel like what it makes me think about is when we are wired and from the inside out, when we are standing in truth, we not only feel, maybe I feel like it's a self-love practice, like a love practice for ourselves, and it brings peace, but then that's also what we give. Like we just give it, if we can give that to ourselves and that's what we give. And that kind of impact is just so incredible. I mean, to be somebody who can, even your hands, like holding space for truth, thinking about what you do. But also what any leader really needs to do is to hold space for the truth to come out of any situation or challenge, right? Or somebody's skill or ability or lack thereof, like truth, being someplace where it's safe for truth to be exposed is really what's coming up for me. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. So in line with what's going through my head. And for me, it's like that next step is to continue is to focus on giving, to your point, right? So like to your point, love, truth, peace. These are things that are very important to me. And when I'm not careful, I'm trying to get
Yeah.
selfishly these things from what's going on around me, right? Trying to force these things, if it makes sense, try to force to get these things. And so just to your exact point, right? To create space, to not try to hold on to them at all, really, but to create space and to give, right?
And
So
then you also receive, like your hands could also be
exactly.
receiving. It's just a giving and receiving process when it's
Exactly.
forced.
Exactly. Very, very insightful,
Oh, that's
Karen.
beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
love it. Okay, my turn. Ready?
Okay.
That's what I got.
Ooh, I see the heart. I see the love. When I see this, right, what it makes me think of is, to your point, right? When all of us, and specifically here, when Karen is grounded in who she's being much more than what she's doing, there's a much fuller expression of herself and the love and passion she has in every aspect of her life, right? Whether it's the doodle casts, whether it's right. When I see the middle, I think of maybe a phone, right? iPhone,
Yeah.
and just there, and then just when you're with people, when you're grounded in this space, more secure, right? Wired from the inside out, much more of the fullness of who you are is expressed in everything you do.
Yeah, I love that. I think I love that how you said, like the first thing you said is I see like the love first. And if I'm not caught up in perfectionism, then I allow people to see that first.
Mm,
And I think reminding myself of that is really important because then when we try to be too perfect, people don't see the love. They might see something well written or well put together, but that's not what that's really the truth is that's very secondary. I want to show I can do things well, but the first thing I want people to feel is the love, right? Like the caring,
yeah.
piece. And when I remember that, and when I just let it go, it's like, I'm just so happy to share it. Like, just like, let's go. Hey, like it's
Yeah.
easy and it's not exhausting. It's life-giving. And, yeah. So
You're not slumped over that table like in the first
I'm
doodle, right?
open. I'm ready.
You're
Let's
open.
go. I see all the
Yeah.
possibilities in front of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes me feel like just kind of ready to like do the things. And I think on a
Yeah.
practical level, um, there are a number of communications that it makes me feel inspired to just do that I've been like thinking about for a while. So it also kind of brings up that very practical next inspired action for me as well.
That's fantastic. As I hear you talk about it, as I hear you share, um, or you talk about, um, oh, it was just there. It was just there. Um, right, going back to what you said at the beginning, it was, oh, the
Yeah.
perfectionism, right? So number one, I've never felt anything but just your complete genuineness in any conversation and interaction I've had with you, right? So I'm always catching you in your secure moments, I feel like, because just you give so much of yourself
I'm
freely.
glad you're feeling that.
Yeah, I do. Number two, thinking about, again, from the standpoint of work I do with others and just myself, when people are constantly presenting me with things and putting things out there that are absolutely perfect in every way, for me personally, it can actually make me feel like there's too much space between them and me to
Mm,
really connect.
mhm.
Because if I know how imperfect I am,
Right.
so if I see and experience nothing but kind of a cold perfection, and it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be cold, right? But a perfection,
Yeah, it
to
comes
me,
across
that
that
can
way.
look like a measurement I can never hit sometimes. So
Yeah.
that came out for me even more as you just talked about it, significantly less I wanted to share.
Oh, I love that. I think it's so important to remember that. Like people want to connect with another human,
Mhm.
somebody who's like, yeah, I get you. Like
Yep.
I don't have everything figured out. I'm not like, monk on a mountaintop. I'm in the
Yeah.
life living messily too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Perfection and excellence are not synonymous,
there you go. That's
right?
a good thing to break. Yes, yes. Thanks. Oh, what a lovely morsel right at the end here. Oh, I love that. Thanks
This is
for
fantastic,
tapping
Karen.
that
This is
double
fantastic.
bow on the top of my
Yeah.
conversation.
It was what you shared that brought it about. So
Yeah, this is
again,
how
just
it
the
works,
beauty of the
right?
conversation, right?
Because
Yes.
I'm being messy, and then you find a cool thing to say about it, and we connect on it. So
Yeah.
we forgot about our outcomes, and we went with it, and it was awesome. I'm so glad you picked that intention. And thank you so much for talking us through this framework. I think it's so important. We're really taught the opposite, right? We're really taught to look outside of ourselves a lot. And I love how this framework really puts the process back in the right order for us.
Mhm.
So I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Always wonderful to be in your presence and to work with you.
Oh
So
yeah,
thank you.
love collaboration. And I think you all can see that Mike is a really great person to work with and collaborate with. So if you want to get in touch with him, I'm going to include all of his links in the show notes. He has group leadership, executive, and life coaching, as well as workshops that he runs. And he also just is always open for a conversation and connection and collaboration. So I hope you'll connect with him if you feel inspired. Thank you so
Please.
much for watching today. And you can find more out about How Doodle at howdoodle.com, including signing up for your Awaken Guide, 3 Doodle prompts to awaken your inner artist and make progress on your goals in 15 minutes or less. And as always, we'll be back here once a month, if not more, helping you to unlock that creativity for your goals. Take care, everybody.